السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا حيا قيوما، نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية. من يهدي الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله، أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وصل اللهم وسلم على خلفائه وعترته وأهل بيته. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Chapter number 17 of the Quran begins in the first verse with the mention of the night journey and the nocturnal ascent, which was a pivotal event that took place in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this chapter is known by two names. One is Al-Isra, which refers to the night journey, and the second name that it is known by is Banu Israel. And the first verse reflects the first title, Al-Isra, and beginning immediately from the second verse, God speaks of Banu Israel, and the case of Banu Israel, that He sent to them Moses, and with Moses was the book, and the overall condition of Banu Israel. So even though only the first verse mentions the Isra, and it is not until chapter 53, Surah An-Najm, in which part of that is dedicated to explaining some of the details of the night journey. So the verse that describes the proximity of the Prophet to God, ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى. That is in Surah An-Najm, chapter number 53. But usually you find that the names of the chapters reflect an overarching theme that is mentioned in the chapter, that is explained in the chapter, or a specific theme that stands out above the rest. And in this case, that specific theme is the night journey. So the night journey is significant for a number of reasons. Number one, it takes place at a pivotal time. It takes place roughly about 2 years before the hijrah, before the migration of the Prophet Muhammad and the early Muslim community from Mecca to Medina. So about 2 years before, around the year 619. And so that would place it immediately after the passing away of two important figures in early Islam and in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And those two figures are Khadija, his wife, his first wife, that supported him with her wealth that she had accumulated, that she had earned. And the other was Abu Talib, his uncle, his advisor, his protector, his mentor, his guide. A man who was willing to sacrifice relationships. He was willing to sacrifice status. He was willing to risk being ostracized and excommunicated from the community of tribal elders, because before that time, the way he was able to protect the Prophet was because of this status that he had. But he was willing to risk that, his status, for the truth. Because the true status means nothing if you're not on the path of truth. It has no value at all. And Abu Talib realized that. So the Muslims for a number of years were in a ravine, an area of land which was owned by Abu Talib. And they faced sanctions in the way that a country faces sanctions today, and the people suffer. So much so that it affected their health, and he passed away soon after. So that's why, looking at the timing of this event is very interesting, because it happens immediately after a time where the Prophet loses, even though they were two people, they were just two people, in number they were only two, but they represented much of the support that the Prophet had, because most of the early Muslims, some of them came from influential families, some of them had wealth, but the vast majority did not. The vast majority actually came from the disenfranchised level of society. People who really didn't have much. In today's terms, the blue-collar people. So he had lost a lot of support, and if you look at it in this way, it shows that it's so pivotal, it's so important that God shows him those signs, because when we read the story of Isra, it's all about the Prophet seeing the signs that he was teaching people. So many of the early chapters in Mecca, they speak about what? They speak about heaven and hell. They speak about the afterlife. They speak about the end of the world. And so the Prophet, after introducing these concepts to the Muslims, was able to see it or witness it on a first-hand basis, and then come back and relay everything that he saw to the community. Because the community was curious. Ya Rasulullah, what did you see? How was that experience? And it's interesting because from those early days, you find a dispute among the companions about whether the Prophet experienced something that was only spiritual, or was it also a body experience as well? So the vast majority of commentators who later came in retrospect and looked back, they said that no, it was a bodily experience as well. That he physically saw those signs. And what's interesting is that it happens outside the realm of ordinary time. See, when we look at time today, there's a past, a present, and a future. And everybody has 24 hours in a day. There's nobody that has 25 or 26 or 48 hours in a day. Everybody has the same amount. Everybody is experiencing the same time. Everybody that you know. Is there anybody that you know that experiences time on another level? Probably not. If they are, let us know about him. We have questions for them. But it happens outside the realm of what we consider ordinary time, which is the 24 hours in a day, the 365 days in a year, or 355 on the Hijri calendar. In that the Prophet is taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then and that's what we refer to as the Isra. So you have two things. You have Sayr, if you've heard the word Sayr. Sayr is journey during the daytime. Isra is journey during the nighttime. So you have the Isra, which is the first leg of the event, the first journey, the first part of the journey. And then the second part of the journey is the Mi'raj, which is the nocturnal ascension. And when the Prophet comes back, the commentary says that the door is still swinging off the hinge, or the chain is still swinging off the hinge, meaning that it happens outside the realm of ordinary time. And of course, the Quran alludes to some miracles which have to do with the adjustment or the folding of time or space-time, such as the event that takes place and described in the case of the Prophet Sulaiman, where he asks the people around him to bring to him the throne of Bilqis, the queen of Sheba. And it happens within the blink of an eye. And how that happens is through the folding of space between the two distances. But you don't see much of this happening, and that's why commentators at that time, or companions, they had so many questions. Because it's something that was so unordinary, so some of them would say that, okay, well, was his body involved as well? Because it couldn't have been his body, because we don't know anybody that has been able to teleport or fold space-time or whatever. And so that's why those questions come up in the first place. But most commentators say that it was also a body experience. So what happens is that the Prophet, he quote unquote, he comes into close proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى. He came close and he was the distance of 2 bows' lengths. And at that time, you find that different people in different languages measure things by something which is common to them, something which is understood to them. So if you told an Arab during that time 2 bows' lengths, they know what the distance is, because everybody had a bow and arrow, or a shield and a sword. So it's a common item that's used. And so when he came back, that became a major rallying point. Because the Prophet, not that he didn't believe before, he absolutely did believe at every stage. In fact, even we believe that when the Prophet first received the initial messages, he believed. But why did he have that reaction where he went home and he asked to be covered? Because even though he believed in it, the message was still a very heavy message. And so it did affect him. It affected him psychologically, it affected his enthusiasm. So when he comes back from the journey of the Mi'raj, after seeing the heaven and hell on a first-hand basis, witnessing it, and some narration said that, of course, the Prophet was a man who would constantly smile and greet people in a very warm manner. You see, some people, they never smile throughout the day. The Prophet, it said that he was always smiling when he was greeting people. But it said that after he saw the hellfire, he never laughed with a loud voice, ever. Because he realized what he had witnessed. He realized what he had seen, how heavy it was. And so he came back and he described to because the companions, they wanted to know, Ya Rasulullah, what happened? What was your experience like? I mean, you had an experience that nobody else has been able to experience. And he tells them about his experience, and they say to him that we want to experience what you are experiencing. How do we get a share of that experience? And that's when the Prophet told them that if you want to experience what I am experiencing, establish the daily prayer. Your daily prayer that you establish is your mi'raj. And that's where that hadith comes from that says, As-salah mi'raju kulli mu'min. The prayer is the mi'raj of every believer. It's an act of ascension. And in the second khutbah, I'll speak a little bit about that. But it's an act of ascension. That if you want to experience what the Prophet experienced, you establish the 5 daily prayers. And get this, the Quran doesn't merely say offer the prayers. Because most of us, throughout our day, we're just offering our prayers. The Quran always talks about establishing the prayers. الَّذِينَ, not الَّذِينَ يُصَلُّونَ, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. Iqama. Iqama means to establish, to firmly root something. So that prayer is not just an arbitrary act. And for most of the time, it's an arbitrary act. Because of so many things that are going on in our lives. If you're a student doing finals, or if at your job you're trying to meet a deadline, you have a boss, you have to meet a deadline, or family issues or finance issues, always something which is occupying our minds. So arbitrarily we offer the prayers. But the Quran talks about establishing the prayers. And if you want to experience the Mi'raj, then you establish the prayer. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. right? When we call the prayer, we say قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, meaning the prayer has been established. It has been firmly rooted. So that became a rallying point for them. That became a point of enthusiasm for them. It was a form of rejuvenation for them. Because imagine, timing is so interesting with everything. The first 13 years, the Prophet was delivering the message with the same intensity that he was delivering the message for the next 10 years in Medina. However, the Prophet didn't get the results until he was later on in Medina, which means that the Prophet had to work on building the foundational stage. You know the saying that Rome wasn't built in a day. In fact, for the first few years, the Prophet only had a handful of followers, which were little in number. In quantity, they were little, but they were very, very great in quality. So it makes no sense to have numbers if they're low quality. Numbers don't mean anything if they're low quality. The Prophet, his followers in the beginning were low in numbers, they were low in quantity, but they were high in quality. And then the foundation was built upon that. And what that means is that anytime you're building a group or a community, in the beginning, there's always a foundational stage, and that foundational stage is always the messiest. If you've ever built a house or brought a contractor to do renovations, it's one of the worst experiences, because the people who are building the foundation, it's messy, it's noisy. Everybody, one person comes, the concrete guy comes, and he messes up for the guy that comes after him, and he messes up for the guy that comes after him. And it's very messy, it's very annoying, it costs much more than you expect, it takes much more time than you expect. You have to invest much more than you initially expect. But then what happens? If you get the foundation solid, then the building, it's easy to build the building and bring the fixtures upon that. And so the timing was very, very important for the Muslim community, that they needed to be rejuvenated. And so the Prophet going on that journey was very important. So one thing that happened when they come back was the establishment of prayers. And the establishment of prayers for the next almost decade took place towards the direction, what was the Qibla? It was Jerusalem, it was not Mecca. Because Mecca, although it was established as a place of monotheism, but by that time, it had become a sanctuary for polytheism. Narrations tell us that there were more than 300 idols and statues in and on top of and around the Kaaba. So it was not yet worthy, and it was not yet appropriate for them to prostrate to Mecca. And so they prostrated towards Jerusalem, the point of contact where the Prophet had made his nocturnal ascension into the heaven. And it wasn't until many years later that the Prophet was doing da'wah. He was spreading the message with a tribe that was outside of Medina, where he received the revelation. In the middle of the prayer, to make a point out of it, in the middle of the prayer, the Prophet receives a revelation to turn the direction. And if you're in Medina, which is where the Prophet was, Jerusalem is north and Mecca is south. It's 180 degrees. So he receives, in the middle of the prayer, the revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him to adjust the Qibla. And within the prayer, he adjusts the Qibla. And in that very spot, there was a masjid that was built. And for those of you who have performed the Umrah and Hajj, if you've been to the city of Medina, you've visited this masjid, Masjidul Qiblatayn, the masjid of two Qiblas, where you pray in the direction of Mecca today, but you can see behind there is something in the shape of a mihrab, which is to signify that, and that points towards the north, which is to signify where the previous Qibla was. Now, here's the thing, when the Qibla was changed from Jerusalem to Mecca, the idols were still there. So for a short while, the Muslims were praying towards Mecca with the idols still there. And so, the message behind that is even though the idols were there, don't get caught up on the thing itself. Even when we pray towards the Kaaba, yes, the Kaaba, we consider it to be the house of God. But there are things that we must assign more value, or there are beings or entities which we need to assign more value than an actual home or an actual brick and mortar type building. In one narration, it says that a believer, one person, a believer, is more dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is more valuable to Allah than his own Kaaba. Al-mu'minu a'azzu ala Allah min al-Kaaba. So honoring a believer, protecting a believer is more important, it's more crucial in the eyes of God than the actual building of the Kaaba itself. The Mi'raj also plays a pivotal role in Islamic spirituality. So the whole idea of ascension, the whole idea of coming into contact with God, the whole idea of how to experience that experience beyond just establishing the ritual prayers. So it plays a pivotal role in Islamic spirituality. But what it does is it also establishes the city of Jerusalem as a crucial point for all believers. Even though the Qibla was changed, but Jerusalem remains, the site of the Holy Mosque and the site of Ascension remains important to all believers worldwide. And you study the history of that city, and for hundreds of years, for centuries, it was ruled in peace. And even when there were wars, even when the Crusades happened, those lasted for a number of years, for a few years, and after that it would go back to a state of relative peace. And so to understand that it has become a crucial point for all Muslims worldwide, so it makes sense that Muslims today are sensitive about subjects or going on in politics and in the media. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and open our hearts to the Quran. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us in this holy month and to bring safety and peace and prosperity to all worldwide. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-asri inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bil-sabr wa sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وصل اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وعترته وأهل بيته علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبط نبي الرحمة وسيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. So, in line with that belief that the prayer, the 5 daily prayers that we establish are referred to as the Mi'raj. Mi'raj kulli mu'min. A narration from our 5th Imam, Al-Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. And he says the following on prayer. He says that, and this is based on the concept that a prayer being accepted with the basic conditions, such as the proper recitation, wudu, proper bodily purity, being on the Qibla. Those are all important, but what is more important than that, what is more crucial than that, is the actual prayer ascending and being accepted. And those are two different things, because when you read a narration that says that 2 units of prayer have the ability to forgive one's sins completely, to wipe the slate clean, what kind of prayer is that? That's the kind of prayer which goes to beyond just the level of meeting the basic conditions. It goes beyond that level, and that's what the Imam is talking about here. He says the following. He says that with your prayers, the ascension of your prayers is proportionate to the concentration and the dedication and the mindfulness that one offers during the prayers. So sometimes only half of that ascends, sometimes only a third, sometimes only a fourth, sometimes only 1/5. Because if you look at the prayer, and if you look at the amount of mindfulness and the amount of concentration and the amount of dedicating your concentration towards the prayers, rarely does it happen that it's at the level of 100%. Normally, it's half, sometimes 1/3, sometimes 1/4. Again, because people are distracted. So what's the remedy for that? Because someone asks, okay, well, what is the remedy? So the Imam continues in that narration. He says the remedy for that, for losing concentration or losing mindfulness, are the nawafil. So the nawafil are the prayers, the mustahab prayers that are offered before or after, such as Salat al-Ghufayla after Salat al-Maghrib, or Salat al-Wutayra after Salat al-Isha, or Nafilat al-Subuh. And even the Dhuhr and Asr prayers also have the Nafilah. What those do is that they make up for any of that amount which is lost. And so it's important to establish that as a regular practice, because it helps make up for anything which is lost. Another narration with the Nafilah speaks about a person's proximity to God, in that the more a person offers the Nafilah, the more he gains proximity to God. And the more he gains proximity to God, the narration says that God offers the person a lens by which to see things by a higher perspective. So the closer you get to God, the more clearly you're able to analyze, the more clearly you're able to think, the more clearly you're able to see, and that is attained through the Nafilah prayer. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us mindfulness and concentration, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be among those who regularly establish the Nafilah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Just one announcement tonight, inshallah, the youth have the first Friday's youth event of the year, which is here, beginning, is it at 6 o'clock? Do you know? Roughly around 7 o'clock, inshallah, with prayers, and after that a discussion, games, and potluck dinner, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.